5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, ignition, liftoff.
You're listening to the GHT Overland podcast. Welcome. Thank you for joining us on the GHT Overland podcast, episode number 91.
This week, we had the opportunity to connect with David Walls from Overland Power Solutions. We hope you enjoy a power-packed educational episode on properly powering your overland rig for safe, worry-free exploration. Welcome, and thank you for joining us on the GHT Overland podcast. This is where you get the greatest interviews and insights from overland travelers around the globe, learning from their stories and experiences as we interview overlanders from places like Australia, Africa, Portugal, and today we are back in the USA. You will learn the basics to the advanced in overlanding, so buckle up and get ready for a new adventure. My name is Chris. Lisa will be back on the next one. So today we are going to dive into some powerful information for your electronic needs. Dave Walls of Overland Power Solutions has graciously agreed to join us to talk about powering your adventures. We are going to talk about 12-volt power options from powering a fridge to charging all your electronics and doing it safely. So without further ado, welcome to the podcast, Dave.
Hey, great. Thanks for having me on. Happy to be here today and take the opportunity to get a chance to talk to everybody.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for taking the time on a Saturday morning to join us. And if you would, tell us a little bit more about you and what your overland adventures generally look like.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely right. Between Overland Power Solutions and everything else going on, it's challenging sometimes, but we love to get out on the trail. I mean, I've actually been doing overlanding, adventure travel, and camping and all other sorts of outdoor activities for a long, long time. But for me, typically, I've got a four-door Jeep that's fully built out and runs our power equipment. We basically use everything that we sell and implement, and so we'll take off. And it may range from a 14-day trip, out west, Moab, and up in Colorado and the Rockies and stuff like that, or it may be as simple as just a couple nights out in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park or somewhere here around us in Tennessee. We've fortunately got a lot of great places to go on a weekend or longer.
Yeah, that's really cool. Then on your company, Overland Power Solutions, how did that come about?
That actually is a really good question. It came about based on us individually, my partner and I, and some of the challenges we ran into as we were actually trying to live the adventure and, practice the lifestyle that we talk about. And so, we get out and everybody does sort of the same thing. They start deciding what they want to do and what their goals are. And then they start putting that hopefully to practical application, and got out in the field and started, killing batteries out of the gate. wanted to take the comforts of home with us, like a lot of people want to do, and just had to really struggle through all of the information because there's just so much information out there. And we just put in the time, talked to the right people. We had a couple of business acquaintances that were really, really, really solid as far as the understanding of the technology goes and best practices. And it's just kind of grown from there, really.
Gotcha. So, and I know your background, you're an IT person, and your partner, your business partner, what is his background?
Right. So Tommy Clapp is my business partner, and he's one of the founding members of Bold Overland for people that know them from Instagram, Facebook, social media. So he's been doing that for a long, long time. I mean, lifetime adventure travel, outdoors guy. Day job for him has been, as of late, being a professor at a university and teaching team building and coursework and stuff that's still sort of related to the kind of stuff we all like to do outdoors. So got a lot of varied experience between the two of us.
That's perfect. Okay, great.
Yeah.
So for a majority of the overlanders that you've talked to, what are a few things that most of us are doing wrong when it comes to setting up our electrical systems?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, and wrong is an interesting term. It's not so much, it's not so much wrong necessarily as it is right. And right meaning right tool for the trade. And I kind of explain that to people because that's a common question. People come up to us and they say, so we have this thing that we've built. What does yours do that ours doesn't? Or how is yours better than ours? And it depends on the job and what you want out of it. So I tell people, if you're putting a wood railing on top of your deck in the backyard, you probably are going to use wood screws, and you wouldn't use a hammer for a wood screw. Similarly, you wouldn't use a screwdriver for a nail, right? So it just depends on what you want. And so what people, I think, do is they don't have necessarily enough information on the front end. They know kind of what they want, but they don't know how to apply that. They don't know what the right equipment is. They don't know how to get everything set up. And so the other thing people do is they tend to make the assumption that they can get by with electrical work and these kind of components by spending as little as possible. And that's where things can become dangerous. So big misconceptions that this can be done really inexpensively. It needs to be done with safety in mind. It needs to be done with knowledge of best practices. And in our opinion, everything needs to be done with quality components. And especially since we do a lot of outdoor activities, everything needs to be able to withstand the rigors of what the environment is. So everything needs to be marine grade and stuff like that.
So batteries are kind of a mystery to me. There's a ton of different things to do. So do I get an AGM? Do I get a deep cycle? Do I get both? Do I get a lithium? What are there 5-6 different kinds of lithium? what direction do we go?
Yeah, right. Okay, so that's a really good question. So you have to go back again to the previous question. What's the goal, right? So one of the things that's happened in the technology that we're talking about is the way that it's changing, right? And that's across the board. So what you have to do is you have to figure out what you're after. So if you're building a rock buggy, you're going to be on the rocks all day, and you're going to be winching, and you're going to have a lot of lights going. Specifically, if they're old type lights, most of those guys are doing what is known as a dual battery system, and that's the kind that you see commonly available through most vendors. And this takes two batteries and puts them together, separates them with an isolator. In that case, both those batteries need to be the same type. So if you're building a system to go in a rock buggy and power lights and winch all day, it's okay to use 2 starter type batteries or high cranking amp batteries. And that's just a standard starter battery. It's probably going to be a gel or an AGM type battery like you'd buy off the counter any place. If you're looking to do more of what overlanders and adventure travelers and campers are looking to do, you're looking at a different solution. And that's the first big misconception as well. People don't understand the difference. So you want to look at deep cycle. AGM is just really another form of deep cycle, right? So you've got AGM and deep cycle type batteries, and then you can have lithium. Most particularly and most recently, lithium polymer batteries. And so the differences are there, right, is that a cranking battery is going to have high cranking power and is designed from the very core of it, the thickness of the plates and everything, to deliver burst of electricity to turn the truck over. So deep cycle batteries are able to take a deeper discharge. They're able to take power more sufficiently, more efficiently, and quickly. And the plates are thicker, and they're also designed to deliver that over time in a smooth, efficient manner, right? So if I'm building a truck and I'm putting an accessory battery in, like we're talking about, a true dual battery system designed for campers and overlanders versus rock crawlers, then what I'm going to do is use deep cycle type battery. And the deep cycle type batteries, your two major flavors there are going to be an AGM deep cycle, right? A solar battery, still AGM, but deep cycle or solar, or lithium. The difference is a lithium battery is going to be fairly close in size to its AGM counterpart. But whereas a 100 amp hour AGM battery would be 80 pounds, the 100 amp hour lithium battery will be 28 pounds. And out of an AG, right? So that's significant. The other significant factor to understand without getting too technical is that when you buy an AGM deep cycle type battery, it has a maximum depth of discharge of 50%. So if I put a 100 amp hour battery in my truck, I'm only going to be able to safely use 50 amp hours. With its lithium counterpart, if I buy a 100 amp hour lithium battery, I'm going to be able to use 80 hours. That's significant. It's a huge difference. And don't forget, even though the sizes will be similar, the weight of the AGM will be 80 pounds and the weight of the lithium will be 30 pounds. So that can affect the way your vehicle handles depending on battery placement. It can affect how your back handles if you ever have to move that thing around. And it's significant. The difference is cost. So that's the place where everybody kind of makes a deep gulping sound and throws the brakes on when you're talking about lithium. That 100 amp hour AGM battery might be $300. Its 100 amp hour lithium counterpart might be $750. That's a really, really significant delta. But it doesn't end there, right? The decision-making process is a little more complicated because the life expectancy of an AGM battery, where it's 3 to 5 years, for lithium it's 7 to 10. So the long-winded answer to your question is that the lithium battery is significantly lighter, offers significantly more power, is on the front end significantly more expensive, but over the life of time of the ownership of the battery, it's almost an even swap because it lasts twice as long as an AGM.
Okay, great. So I've got that. Yep. So, but do we need to hit both of them need to be the same if we got that dual battery system?
No, that's a common misconception, and it's the difference. It's the difference in the technology. If you're using what we were describing earlier, is what a lot of the type battery systems are out there nowadays that just use an isolator or some sort of solenoid. That older type system, that system is designed, and the battery chemistries need to be very similar, if not identical.
Okay.
So that's the other benefit of what the type of systems like we do. And again, we didn't make this technology from scratch. We use RedArc is a name that's been out there that probably most people are familiar with. We use their products. We also like C-Tech, their quality. But the thing about this type of system is the battery chemistries should be, not just could be, but should be entirely different. You should have a starter battery doing the job of a starter battery, and more properly, you should have a deep cycle AGM or lithium battery doing the job of the accessory battery. And because the DC to DC charging device sits in between both of them, it allows the separation and isolation. It also allows that second battery to do something the other type of system can't do. It allows the second battery to charge all the way, and that's huge. If you only have a limited amount of power to support your adventure time off grid, and if you're not able to get that second battery ever charged past 80%, I mean, you might be losing 10 or 12 hours or more of battery time. So the DC to DC chargers, they cross that, they bridge that gap.
Got it. And the other thing that came to mind, I have no idea why, but the
Sure.
lithium batteries, are they designed to take the heat if it's sitting like in your engine compartment?
It's a good question. If you look at RedArc's manuals, RedArc doesn't recommend running lithium batteries in the engine bay, and those guys have fantastic support. You have to call them really late U.S. time to get them in Australian time, which we do almost on a weekly basis. But realistically, what I've been told from RedArc is that that was put in their documentation because standards in Australia for lithium battery cells are not near what they are in the U.S. It does kind of depend on the manufacturer here. So what we do is we check with the manufacturers and make sure that the batteries are designed to do that. Now, just in general, common knowledge, a lithium battery, lithium polymer 4 batteries like we're talking about, they are safer than AGM type batteries. They also handle heat better than AGM type batteries. Where they struggle or can struggle is, if you don't get the right kind, is in very cold situations. So in a very cold situation, no battery charges well, not even an AGM, right? Deep cycle or otherwise. That's why guys lose their battery when it gets super cold outside, if the battery's borderline anyway. But a lithium battery, if you try to actually charge the battery and the temperature's below freezing and the cells, remember, temperature below freezing and the cells below freezing. So they'd have to be sitting in an environment where the battery itself is sub-freezing. If you try to charge a lithium battery in that state, you can damage it permanently. So you just have to make sure that if you're going to be using a lithium type battery in cold situations, that you get the right kind that has the protective circuits, or some of them even have a little heater built in. It's a heating circuit. And so it's all about the right tool for the trade, which goes back to why we kind of started doing what we do. We would ask people these kind of questions and not be able to get the good information. Once you figure it out and once you know what type of battery to put in the system, depending on what you're asking it to do, it's really not that complicated.
Gotcha. So Red Arc is a good one to go to for the isolator. I probably said that wrong. What is it? What would you refer to that as?
Yeah, man. I don't want to refer to that as an isolator. The two types of technologies is two similar batteries with an isolator, and we can talk about the limitations of that. That's a question I get all the time. But more importantly, the DC to DC charger. And so Red Arc produces a line of different equipment, but their bread and butter for us is their line of DC to DC charging products. So we have questions about that. We can talk about that as well.
Okay, so you got the DC to DC charging, and then if you were to go get a battery, whether it be a lithium or let's say the tool for the trade, like a deep cycle battery would be the better option. What's the brand that you would go to for those two things?
Okay, so we are a huge fan and use exclusively for AGM type batteries produced by a company called VMAX Tanks. And these guys make a fantastic product. They make both lithium and AGM type batteries. Specifically, their AGMs tend to carry more capacity than similar battery manufacturers at a probably a better price point, and their customer service is literally out of this world. So for AGM and lithium batteries, and their lithium batteries are something that are really, they've just started releasing here, but their AGM batteries we've been using for a couple years, and they're phenomenal. For lithium batteries, we like Reliant, we like Battleborn, and we like let me think who the other one is. I guess probably Bioenno. Bioenno's been in the game a long time. Battleborn is American-owned company, and great guy, great company, great product, great warranty. And we are dealers, and we will use any one of the three depending on the needs of the client and the application.
Okay, got it. Now, if we start with a basic dual battery system using a couple deep cycle batteries, or if it's better to use a lithium with a basic inverter or the DC to DC charger, let's say if we get something not Red Arc, like, is there anything else that somebody can use? I know a lot of people are going to go to like Amazon and just pick the cheapest thing, right?
Yeah,
Is
right.
that going to work, or should we be getting a bigger fire extinguisher? What's going to happen here?
It's such a funny thing, and this sounds like I'm about to go into a comedy sketch, but I'm not. It's a solid question, right? Because that is the stop. I mean, I'll talk to folks. Yeah. I'll talk to folks for an hour on the phone. I mean, our sales cycle is not quick. I'll talk to people for 10 different phone calls. There's no bill involved. Our goal is to find out what they're really after and to show them the value in doing things the right way, right? And so what comes up is the cost. And the cost, of course, like anything else, everything's great until, the checkbook has to come out. But reality is what we found in the overlanding and in the outdoor adventure travel and off-roading, guys don't have a problem spending $1,500 on a light bar, but they want to spend $150 on their entire electrical system. You know what I mean? And so the answer to the question is this: in the DC to DC charger game, in the dual battery game, if you want to have sustainability, off-grid, if you want to have power on tap to live your adventure, to charge your batteries, to charge your camera equipment, to power your drones, to do all these things, your refrigerator, all these things. If you want to do that, you got to do it right. So marine grade wire, DC to DC charging, there's only two names in the game, Red Arc and SeaTech. Red Arc cut its teeth in Australia, doing this crazy stuff. I mean, literally out there hammering away at this stuff day in and day out. I mean, they are the de facto go-to solution. SeaTech has a great line of DC to DC charging products, really two, I believe, but they cut their teeth on high-dollar European motorsports. So their origins are two different places. Either one are high quality. My money's all going on Red Arc. And so once you get to the place where you understand the value in the DC to DC charger, then what you need to understand is Red Arc is the only way to fly in my mind. And, I used to have SeaTech, but there's just so many things that Red Arc brings to the table. And their whole company is driven by advances in doing this stuff. And so once you know that, I mean, a guy doesn't have a lot of choices. If you go out to Amazon and you try to buy something off Amazon, you can buy everything that we put in our system. The challenge isn't buying the components. The challenge is knowing how it all goes together. So there's the cautionary tale. Go to Amazon if you want to and buy your DC to DC charger and try to buy all of this stuff. That's not going to be a problem. The problem is, what happens if you don't use the appropriately gauged wire? What happens if the wire is too small? What happens if you've got the wrong type or wrong size of circuit breakers or circuit protection? Like, that's where electrical fires happen and things go really, really south really quickly. So if you go looking for a DC to DC charger, you're only going to find Red Arc. They have 2 or 3 different models. But realistically, we found the sweet spot is the Red Arc 1225. If a person came to me and they said, hey, man, I want to do a system and I want to do DC to DC charging with a built-in solar controller, Red Arc 1225. If they said, I want to add ground power, shore power to that so I can pull into any place with an electric outlet and plug up to the fender on the truck, it's just going to be a ground or shore power charger depending on what type of battery it is. Usually we use a SeaTech for that because Red Arc doesn't have a shore power charger, but SeaTech has a really good one. If it's a lithium battery, that changes a little bit because the lithium chargers are a little bit different, but it's pretty common stuff. The real challenge is knowing how to make it all work together. So did that answer the question for you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that our listeners and myself would like to, at all cost, avoid a big fire in the middle of nowhere and leave us stranded and have to write a bigger check to replace all that stuff.
Yeah, it's correct. Well, and like I said, I mean, it's not uncommon. I mean, to be honest, right? Light bars are really cool. There's a lot of really cool technology, suspension. I mean, there's so many crazy, fantastically cool things that guys do to their vehicles to allow them to get out and live this type of life. And to be honest, some wires and circuit breakers, like, that's not near as interesting. But it is the infrastructure. It's literally the backbone of everything else. And if you do it right, it will change the way that you live your adventure. And if you do it wrong, every single time you go out on a trip, you're going to be beating your head against the wall. So it's worth spending a little bit of time and money to do it right.
Yeah, it's really good. So let's take it a little step further. Do you guys do anything with solar?
We do. So like I said, DC to DC chargers have the solar controller built in, and it's a really solid controller. So it's when we do typically an install or when we put together a builder's kit, we'll include a solar port, which is a weatherproof port that guys can mount. There's a place on every type of vehicle. Like for 4Runner guys, it's on the weather caps up on the A-pillars where they come down to the front hood. I mean, for Jeeps, it's the fenders or really wherever, but there's a little port piece for that. And then once you have that, like, that's included. That's the great thing about the Red Arc products is that controller's built in. So all you have to do after that is get the right kind of solar panel, which is another huge question, right? Because everybody wants solar. Yep. So I get guys and they're like, well, I want solar. So what do I do there? Well, a large percentage of people think it's really cool to put the solar panels on the roof of the vehicle. And I mean, it can be. Go back to our wood screw and our nail conversation. It depends on what you're asking it to do. So if you put solar panels on the roof, you can run a simple wire down to this connector, and plug it in there, or you can hardwire it into the system with a single crimp, right? The challenge is with solar panels on the roof, when the roof gets hot, it acts like a heat sink. So if the solar panel's sitting on the roof, it gets hot. When it gets hot, like any other piece of electronic that's properly designed, they'll start backing off and try to self-preserve. So it becomes less efficient. The other thing about solar panels mounted on top of the roof of the vehicle is, where would you think the vehicle needs to be parked in order to get the maximum efficiency out of the sun?
Well, it needs to be parked in the sun.
What's inside the vehicle? Your refrigerator, which is working harder now because the truck is baking in the noonday heat. All your gear, everything is baking. So I personally, and a lot of guys that come to us with conversations about solar panels on roof, end up coming to the conclusion it'd be much better to have like a Overland Solar Bug Out 120 that's a super, super efficient, super great solar array that unfolds, that can sit at the end of a 25 or 30-foot cable, so you can park your truck and everything in the shade and drop the solar panels out in the middle of the sun, right? So either one of those solutions, it's just a matter of plugging a black wire and a red wire into one connection or the other. You just have to decide what you're after. Where solar panels on the roof come in really handy is if you've got the extra real estate. Like if you've got a roof rack that you've spent a lot of money on and you've got nothing better to put up there, like you're just not going to use it. And you happen to have, some money in the bank or a solar panel that you can mount it up there and trickle charge. Like it's free power, right? So I guess if I had the resources to do it and it wasn't going to cost me anything, and I never thought I'd want to really use my roof rack for much, or at least a good chunk of it for much, I might consider putting a panel up there. But, big fan of having a panel that's deployable, especially the Bug Out. The Bug Out 120 is one of our favorite products we've seen in the last year and a half. And Brian from Overland Solar is known in the industry among the people that actually get out and do this stuff, not just talk about it, as having one of the best products on the market. And so this 120, to save a little bit of questions on that later, this 120, instead of it being a 35-pound thing that's 20 inches by 20 inches by 10 inches and takes up a lot of real estate in the truck, which we all know is limited, this thing is like 22 inches wide and fan folds down to about 4 inches thick. And it'll keep a truck with a large refrigerator and all these gadgets, it'll keep it topped off all day on a partly cloudy day. It's hard to beat that. But you get a lot more efficiency and better use of power from a directional panel that you're able to change its angle and stuff to face the sun better than just a flat mounted one up on the roof. So that's probably everything and more that you ever wanted to know about solar.
That's awesome. So if we go back to the batteries a little bit, just keeping safety in mind, is there a cutoff switch that we should have at the batteries? Does this red arc DC to DC charger take care of that? What's the best option to make sure that if something does go wrong, we can get it turned off as quickly as possible?
So how about if we digress just a little bit? Let me answer that question, and I think maybe this will help everybody in general. The basic design of a system, right, is this. You have your starter battery, and then you have your accessory battery, right? So if I'm building that system for you, man, to go in your truck, I'm going to have your starter battery. I'm going to have your solar battery. Preferably somewhere inside or in the back cargo bay of the truck, someplace where you can have a large enough battery. So a lot of guys want the battery to go into the hood. That's okay, but most trucks are only going to hold a very small capacity battery under the hood. It's workable. The experience requires the end user to do a little bit more work to keep it maintained. So for you, if I'm writing that check, I'm going to put a starter battery up front. I'm going to put a house battery in the back. Then I put a circuit breaker that's appropriately sized within 8 inches of that starter battery. I put another circuit breaker that's appropriately sized within about 8 inches of that back battery. Then the DC to DC charger itself is somewhere, right, depending on how you want to build it. It's somewhere in between those two, and it has both over voltage and under voltage protection. In there also in the mix is going to be a power distribution point, for lack of a better word, a hub, where all of these other little things can be wired into, like your refrigerator, your ham radio, USB chargers, LED lighting strips, area lights out the back, just all of this stuff. That is all circuit breakered with appropriately sized circuit breakers or appropriately sized fuses. So realistically, as long as you have done the math and understand how to size the wire, and as long as you have all of the right circuit breakers where they need to be, the components themselves are protected. The wiring in between is the point of all of these things like guys call circuit breakers and fuses, right? Because usually the individual components have their own built-in protection. So it's not really a concern. Where there's a concern is where wires aren't dressed appropriately and they end up rubbing a hole through the insulation, and then the wire touches a piece of metal, or if cheap wire is used, or if connections aren't properly crimped and a wire comes out and flops over on top of something else because it wasn't secured properly. Like little details like that are a problem. Circuit breakers, fuses, those things are pretty simple. You just have to know online where to go find a chart that says how far are you going to run and how much power are you putting through it, and then just use the right size cable.
Got it. That makes sense. So then on that safety aspect, if there is an electrical fire, what are your recommendations for like a fire extinguisher? What should we have to make sure we can put that out?
Well, it's electricity, right? So don't use water. that wouldn't be good. A Class C extinguisher should do that. Any extinguisher that is rated to work with electrical fire should be fine. Okay. The other thing again, big fan of that's. I'm a big fan of circuit breakers. Hit the breakers, right? I mean, they do make. We have installed big, ginormous, kill switches and stuff like that. But realistically, we're working with very safe levels of electricity. The only place where there's a lot of current or a lot of possibility potential there is actually at the battery, and that's circuit protected within 8 inches. So other than that first 2 to 8 inches of wire, everything else should be pretty straightforward. But a Class C fire extinguisher is your friend.
Gotcha. Okay. So there's a lot to keep in mind here. What are some of the other questions that you hear on a pretty regular basis that would be really beneficial for somebody setting up an electrical system?
Okay. So one of the questions I get is location of the battery. And, that's a difficult one, because the battery is going to take up a certain amount of space and it's going to have a weight associated with it. So everybody wants to put the battery where they don't have to think about it. And the most common logical place most people want to place the battery is under the hood. The challenge is that you're limited in space. And even if you can physically, dimensionally fit something under the hood, you have to worry about the weight. Is there reinforcement enough in the fender wells? Is that battery going to be safe and secure there? So the challenge there is, if you can only fit a 60 or 70 amp hour battery under the hood, and you can only use half of that, say 30 amp hours, but you plan on running a fridge 24/7, and you've got rock lights that you want to have on, and you've got LED lighting that you want to light up your campsite, from 6 o'clock in the evening till you go to bed at 11 o'clock. If you have all these expectations, you might not be able to get that done with a small battery like that. Or you'll be able to get it done with a battery, but you're going to have, either a shore power place to plug up to, or the nice thing about DC to DC that a lot of folks don't understand is if I find myself in the evening and I'm starting to get a little bit lower in the battery capacity than I'd want to be, because remember, we don't want to go below 50%. So let's say we're getting ready to go to bed and I'm at 60%, and I know I'll never make it through the night because it's hot and that fridge is keeping my beer cold. Well, here's the thing. I can start the truck up and let it idle for about 30 minutes while I'm getting ready for bed, and I just bought myself another night off grid. Right. So, but you will have to use those sort of plan B options if you have a much smaller battery. We find the sweet spot is to be about 100 or 125 amp hour battery. And to get that, most guys will want to find another place inside the rear of the vehicle to secure that. They do that by building out a box, or if it's a truck, they'll have a drawer system, just some place where they can secure that battery. So battery size and battery placement is a question. I get the solar question quite a bit. A lot of people don't understand the difference between a DC to DC, and so this is probably the number one question. Why not just an isolator, right? And I think you had asked this question earlier. Why not just an isolator? Probably the single biggest question. Here's why. If you're out and you're doing your research and you're looking at or talking to somebody who's selling you a dual battery system, and that system has an isolator or an ACR, but it does not have a DC to DC charger involved, which means a red arc or a C-Tech, then what you need to understand about that is that second battery will likely never get above 80% or 85%. And if you're running the two batteries together, and you have like a late model vehicle, anything after probably 2006, there's an eco sensor part to the alternator, which is also going to want to slow that charging down. The DC to DC charger is the only way you're going to get that secondary battery if you use a performance deep cycle or AGM, hybrid, lithium. The only way you'll ever get it charged all the way is by using a DC to DC charger. I mean, there's other ways to fool it. You can go and spend $200 or $300 and get a high output alternator and spend your money that way, but then you still are only getting a raw dump of power at it. You're not getting the clean charging that'll keep and maintain the battery healthy. Because the other thing the DC to DC does is it charges the battery according to the manufacturer's specs. Like, it literally runs it through a smart charging profile. And so, again, if you're not using the DC to DC, you're missing the boat on that. The battery's not going to be properly maintained. It's not going to be charged 100%, and you're not going to have solar capability built in. So that's the main difference.
Got it. Any other big ones we should cover?
No. Let me think. I get asked about inverters quite a bit. And so the challenge with an inverter is probably 20% inefficient out of the gate. So, if you're going to use an inverter, you need to probably be pretty surgical in how you go about figuring that out. And what that means is everything that you want to use with that inverter has a power draw associated with it. I mean, think wattage. You can get on Google or go out to the internet or contact the manufacturer of your skill saw or your coffee maker or whatever it is you want, and they can tell you what the rating needs to be for what's supplying power to that device. And for example, if you think that you're going to use a toaster oven, just be aware, a lot of times the toaster oven will take 1,500 watts of power. And so what that does, it means you need to have 1,000 or 1,500 watt inverter, probably a pure sine inverter, probably $500 to $700, and the wire going to that is going to be as big around as your thumb. You know what I mean? So maybe hold off on the toast or get one of those toasters that you can hold over a campfire.
Espresso machine, Dave. We got to have espresso.
I mean, some of those little it's not the first time I've heard that. Some of those little espresso machines take 2,500 watts, and it can all be done. But I mean, you're talking about $700 or $800 for an inverter or more, and you're talking about wiring that costs $7 a foot. Ooh. You know what I mean? So, I think we all want to be comfortable, but limits. Or there's a lot of great espresso makers that are backpacker types that don't require an inverter that's going to cost you an arm and a leg.
Yeah, that's probably the better way to go.
Yeah.
All right. Cool.
The other thing is people need to understand is I get the question goal zero. I get all the time, guys start talking about trying to do this, and there's always some guy that's like, well, I'm just going to go buy a Goal Zero lithium unit, put it in the back of the truck, and I'll plug my fridge up to that. And here's the thing. Goal Zero is a great product. I mean, I've got some of their stuff. The problem is by the time you go buy a Goal Zero that has the capacity and will give you the experience you want, you're going to spend $1,700 or $1,800. Which is going to be well within, if not the same, as what probably a dual power system costs using a red arc solution. But you're only going to have just that, and all the connectors are going to be proprietary. It's going to be slow, and it's only going to have about half the features. So it just depends. If somebody wants to go out tomorrow because they got a trip on Monday and they want to spend a lot of money, you can do Goal Zero, but just have the expectation it's going to be what it is, and it's not an apples and oranges conversation or an apples and apples conversation. It's an apples and oranges conversation. So good product, but again, it all depends on what you're asking it to do.
Very good. So it sounds like being smart, thinking in advance. Don't go on a trip tomorrow and think you need to get everything tonight. You need to kind of plan these things in advance a little bit more. And I would agree that electrical system is really one of the basics that you've got to have. It's the foundation of a lot of what you're doing. So do it right, do it smart. If someone is more comfortable bringing in an expert like yourself to design and maybe do the work. Tell us a little bit more about your company, how our listeners can get in contact with you.
Sure. Right on. Yeah, right. I mean, that's what I tell people all the time. So my day job, if you will, as an engineer, our company, we are what's called a managed service provider. So we go out, we talk to business owners, and we really listen and get to know their business. We understand and we ask the right questions. We get them to tell us what their goals are and what's standing in the way of them getting what they want. And then we fix all of that, right? So we've just carried that same business model over into what my partner Tommy and I do with Overland Power Solutions. You and I, if you reach out to us, you'll talk to either Tommy or I, probably one of the two of us. We are going to take some really, really, really good time to figure out exactly what it is you want to do. And we're going to tell you the best way to do that. Here's what our goal is. Our goal is simply to listen to our clients and figure out and interpret what they're asking for, right? Because people don't always know the terminology, and that's fine. But we want to listen to you and hear what you're saying and tell you the right way to do what you want to do. And we can also sell you the stuff, right? We can also help you understand how to put it together, or we can put it in for you. But our primary goal is just to solve the problem we ran into, which is why can't I just go ask somebody that's knowledgeable that can help me figure out how to do this? And so that's what we do. So if you want us to help with that, we're happy to. If you want us to do the install, come see us in Tennessee, God's country, hang out for a couple days. We'll do a turnkey install for you, or we'll send out a system builder's kit and we can get you there. It's not that complicated. If you can operate a crimping tool and cut a piece of wire and maybe know how to read a tape measure, you can put this stuff together, and we supply everything you need. I mean, you may have to go to the hardware store maybe one time, but that's what I tell everybody, because I know the first time I put one of these systems in my truck, I had to run back and forth to West Marine like 20 times over a period of 3 weeks. So if you want to get in touch with us, probably the easiest way, you can reach out to us via email. So you can do info@overland-power.com. You can send one to David at overlandpower.com. You can send one to Tommy, or you can message us on Instagram or Facebook. We're on all of those.
Okay, that's awesome. And so if they want to connect with you, let's say on social media, is that also going to be Overland? Is it dash power? No, it's just all one word on Instagram or Facebook, Overland Power Solutions. So if you're not following us, you should follow us. We've got some stuff. We're going to start putting out some videos. It's been amazing. We have some people that have partnered with us, Wanderlost Overland. You guys are probably familiar with them. Yep. And we've just had incredible responses from some of the videos they've put out. So we are in the process of starting a YouTube channel to put a lot of this good information out and stuff as well. But Overland Power Solutions on Instagram or Facebook. And again, hit us up at overland-power.com is our domain name. It's our website, and the email is info@overland-power.com, and that'll get Tommy and I both, or somebody else will respond to you for sure. Okay, great. So it's been a lot of fun. Anything that we've missed, or any other details that we should go through? I don't think so. I mean, that I would say do your research, but in this kind of industry, it's challenging to do research. I know I did my research, and there's just so much information, and there's so much good information, right? Like, nobody is being deceptive on purpose. It's just all stuff that's not something that we all natively know how to do. And there's so much information out there, and there's a considerable risk if you do it wrong. And I know that's paralyzing for some people. But the big thing is just knowing where to go to get the right information. And you can, Red Arc is a great company. They have great videos out on YouTube. They've got a lot of good informational stuff. So I'd check them out. I think the big thing that your listeners can know is if they're going to do dual batteries, and they want a system to do that correctly for, I think, what probably your target audience is after, they need to really strongly consider a DC to DC dual battery system that uses solar and shore power. And you know what? More importantly, too, we did leave this out. Power monitoring, that's the last big thing. Power monitoring. People don't know. Like, they'll spend a lot of money or not. They'll put something in their truck, but they have no idea whether it's really working or how well it's working. So we're a strong emphasis on having a power monitoring system that lets you know exactly how everything's working. So get a quality system.
get one with a DC to DC charger in it. Make sure you've got a power monitoring and management component to that to let you know in layman's terms when you need to come up with your plan B and be safe. That's it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. Good points. So let's wrap it up with a few fun facts about you. What keeps your co-driver occupied during long drives? If you have one.
You know what? So I have a fantastic wife. We've been married for about 19 years. Usually the sunshine keeps her asleep when I'm driving. That's what keeps her occupied. We do. There's a lot going on. It's as a pilot, I have some flight time under the belt. As a pilot, it's called cockpit management, right? So trying to figure out where we're going, where we're stopping at next. I'm a little bit of a techie, so there's nothing less than 2 smartphones and at least 1 tablet going with an OBD2 reader putting out information and a ham radio and all that. There's always something to do.
That's awesome. Great. And do you play any musical instruments on the road or around the campfire at night?
You know what? I used to play a little bit of the saxophone, and I have a harmonica that I will break out and people will pay me not to try to play it around the campfire. So no.
Yeah, we've heard of a few of those going missing mysteriously.
Well, I found one. I found mine after about 6 months the other day. So
yeah, exactly.
Maybe time to come out of retirement.
What's your favorite drink of the morning to get you going?
Well, that depends, man. If it's a work day, I'm a Mountain Dew guy. If it's a camp day, it might just be a little bit of whiskey and Coke. Perfect.
Good. That's good. And what's a favorite drink at night to wind down after a long day on the road?
Well, that might always be a whiskey and Coke.
As it should be. And as we were finishing up, I lost a connection with David. Sounds like he will be at the Overland Expo East this year. So if you're going to go to that, be sure and stop by Overland Power Solutions and say hi. And a big thank you to David for taking the time to provide a ton of great information. Be sure and check out their website at overland-power.com and on Instagram and Facebook at Overland Power Solutions.
It's a good idea to visit the show notes page on our website at ghteoverland.com/podcasts. Select the Overland Power Solutions episode. All the details and helpful links are already there for you. And we don't have any updates on Jolie and Mark of The Way Overland. We ask that you continue to keep them in your thoughts and prayers. If you're not up to date, you can listen to episode number 90 from last week.
A big thank you to our Patreon supporters. Your support of the podcast seriously means the world to us. If you'd like to help support the show and get a t-shirt, coffee mug that doubles as a sweet GNT mug at night, take a look at the options while you're there. You can send any questions, suggestions, and feedback to ghteoverlandpodcast@gmail.com. We'd love it if you'd connect with us on the social medias at GHT Overland, and be sure to share this episode with your friends who enjoy travel and adventure. Overlanding travel is all about meeting new friends, seeing the most amazing places on earth, and of course, new food and new drinks.
If you enjoyed the episode, it would mean the world to us if you slid over to rate and review the podcast. Then be sure you're a subscriber. It's free and you get automatic uploads of each new episode, so you can listen to it offline, of course. So go give GHT Overland Podcast a little extra love on your podcast platform of choice. Thank you, and we will see you next Thursday for a brand new episode of the GHT Overland Podcast. Bye.